Chapter 30. The Great Fire of '35. With the opening of the Erie Canal, New York seemed to realize that it was destined to become a giant, and began to reach out in every direction. By 1828, the Delaware and Hudson Canal gave it access to the rich coal fields of Pennsylvania. In 1832, ground was broken for the New York and Harlem Railroad. The first horse cars traveled from Prince to 14th Street in that year, and 5 years later their track reached to Harlem. The first railroad station arose where the municipal building now stands, and about the same time the New York and Erie Railroad was incorporated and its construction begun. The city was full of the spirit of scientific experiment. S.F.B. Morse, a professor in the recently formed University of the City of New York, situated on the east side of Washington Square, brought out in 1837 a practical electric telegraph and transmission code. Submarine devices, life preservers, an apparatus for raising sunken ships, and, most important of all, steam locomotives were variously exhibited to capitalists eager for investments. New York, with its wealth, its adventurous spirit, and its tremendous energy, became the natural place to organize enterprises. It was growing at a phenomenal rate and contained more people than Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Boston, its closest rivals, combined. Julian Verplanck, an old New Yorker, remarked that his native city had become a sort of thoroughfare where almost every remarkable character is seen once in the course of his life. However, the year 1834, in which Brooklyn was incorporated as a full-fledged city, was not a happy one in New York. There were hard times again, with a gradual rise in rents and prices. Considerable ill-concealed bad feeling existed among the mixed races that were giving the 5 Points region on the Bowery an unsavory reputation, and this feeling was constantly flaring up in the form of riots which the city militia was called upon to quell. Newspapers, delivered by messenger, were expensive and contained mostly political speeches, advertisements, and shipping news. Horace Greeley tried the experiment of a penny paper in 1833, but it failed, and it was James Gordon Bennett, working 17 hours a day in a basement at 20 Wall Street, who succeeded in revolutionizing the entire newspaper game. He had competitors in William Cullen Bryant, editor of the Evening Post, and Benjamin Day of the Sun, but he boldly threw over all traditions, adopted the slogan "News, not Views," reported doings on the stock exchange, in the churches and law courts, to the complete scandal of his readers, and he had plenty of them, and got scoops on his rivals by maintaining a fast boat off Montauk Point to bring in word from European packets. Later, he employed a foreign correspondent, and during the Mexican War was one of 3 editors to maintain a pony express from Mobile to Montgomery, thus establishing the Associated Press. The rioting, the general mistrust that was reflected in the newspaper controversies, the labor strikes, the unruly behavior of theater audiences, all this unrest was suddenly given a dramatic sort of representation early in the morning of December 17th, 1835. Citizens awoke to find the sky filled with smoke and flames. A fire had broken out on Merchant Street, the present Hanover, at Pearl, and was already sweeping through the warehouses and shops. The buildings in that neighborhood were mostly of wood and flimsy in construction, and even those built of brick and stone, like the Merchants' Exchange, with its great statue of Alexander Hamilton standing in the center of a broad corridor, were soon beyond salvaging. To increase the tragedy, water froze in the hydrants, and the firemen stood by helplessly while nearly 700 buildings were consumed. This, the worst of New York's long series of fires, destroyed millions of dollars worth of property and paralyzed the markets of the city. Had anyone pronounced it a blessing in disguise while its ashes were still being scattered over the surrounding streets, he would have been viewed with suspicion. But, for all that, the fire of 1835 did more than anything else to secure future fire protection, improve building laws, and usher in the Croton water system.